Welcome to the Weight Free Wellness Podcast. I am Tara Bachland, and this is episode number 39, Getting Through a Sad Christmas. And I feel like I should start this podcast off by saying Merry Christmas. And if you celebrate other holidays, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. But I am focusing, obviously, on Christmas. That's how I grew up with the Christmas tradition. And when you grow up with certain traditions, you have these memories. And either they're memories of how your parents tried to make them, or even how they should be. We have these songs that we sing about the ideal situations, the ideal states. So I wonder at times if our memories are really just a conglomeration of all of these, the classic movies that we watch over these holiday seasons, and the stories, I think, create more of our feelings about how things should be. And that's kind of another topic, so I won't get too far into that, but it's maybe a good prelude into this topic because, I believe that more people are sad at Christmas than will admit. It's just, I think it's much more common, but it's like we're not supposed to say anything. And to me, it seems like sad times stem from one thing, and that is death. Death of loved ones, relationships, ideas of what could or should have been, or even death of the past ideas, or moving through a stage in life. And what's ironic is that Christmas is about the celebration of life, right? We're celebrating the birth of Jesus. But like any good life lesson and any good story, the potential for great joy is counterbalanced by the likelihood of great sadness. You don't have a great story without having these opposites pulling and tugging at each other. And, life is just very poetic in that way too. And by sharing this, believe me, I don't mean to be negative. I'm actually wanting to relate and reach out and help those who are struggling and truly suffering at this time. I've been there. Sadness still overcomes me at these times too. So I want to say, if the Christmas time is sad for you, I really welcome you in. This is just a kind of a taste of what we could get into, but I just want to put this out there that there are other people who are or have been through what you're going through, and it could be a whole list of things, like I had mentioned, the actual death of a loved one, the ending of a relationship. There's so many things that metaphorically come together and can feel very similarly. But I'm going to share a little bit of my story. And I still haven't decided how much to share of my story on this podcast. And believe me, I know the pain of separation from people who said they loved me, but whose actions did not speak the same words. I've felt the guilt of not being able to make things better, to be the solution I knew I could and wanted to be, and I felt guilty even when others tore apart the progress that I felt that we had made. In today's day and age, divorce is now accepted as a normal way to separate legally and otherwise from a troubling spouse. What is not so widely accepted is to separate from troubling people whom you had no choice in being involved with in the first place. And if you haven't caught on to what I'm talking about, I mean family. I'm divorced from my family of origin, and like many divorces, there are multiple sides of the story and a lot of hurt feelings. And so my point here is not to enforce my side of the story, is to relate, again, on the sad Christmas, when you're experiencing a sad Christmas side of it. I fought to mend a complex, codependent family dynamic relationship while striving to understand my own values, standards, and to create healthy boundaries. That one sentence could be a whole podcast in and of itself. But I'm going to expand just a little bit because you may actually be in the crux of it right now. This is what's most challenging, particularly if you're going through a situation where there isn't a clear death. There isn't a clear ending, and you're still kind of in the back and forth with the situation, person, or people. And especially if there's codependent dynamics. Again, it could be a whole nother topic, but if you feel like you're in this tug of war kind of battle, that is probably a good synopsis of the codependent relationship. And it's not clear then to both parties, but especially the party that feels like they're being abused, their values and their boundaries, and this was me in the situation, were not clear enough. And so I felt myself going back and forth because, of course, when you grow up in that situation, your values and your boundaries are usually what you were taught growing up. And so to be separate from that and create your own values and boundaries is a really challenging process, but very, very valuable. You'll find so much more, you'll learn so much more about yourself. So that was a little sideliner there to help you if you're maybe in that situation at this time. And that's really the most challenging part, is when you think you can mend things, and maybe you were the healer in the family, but at the same time you're trying to identify with these feelings that are going on, and they're kind of doing battle within you. So as you can hear, it's difficult for me to know how much to share. I really want to help others in a similar situation. And I also want to break the taboo that being separate from one's family is unacceptable. And I'm not sure, is the only way to share, the only way to do this, to share everything? That still doesn't feel right either. And so I'm still looking for solutions. So anyways, you got a little bit of the story. And I want to emphasize too that I have forgiven these people and do not want to cause them any hardship by what I share. And that's why I'm very careful about what I share, and acknowledge too that they have their own story. So I really walk this line carefully and steadily. I love them. I still love them, but at a distance. So maybe that isn't quite entirely your story, but you still identify with the feeling of loss and of sadness. And if loss is making you feel sad, I want to say that it's natural to mourn what we have lost: a loved one, a relationship, even a thought or idea of how we thought things were or how they should be. A lot of times that's wrapped in a relationship situation where you wanted your relationship to be a certain way, or you thought it was going to go to a certain level, or even in your life, you think you're at a certain age and you thought, well, by this time I thought I should have this in my life, or this should be happening, and it's just going on and on where it hasn't happened, and so you feel like you're losing that thought, you're losing that state that you've created in your mind, and that can cause grief as well. Grief is different for each person in each situation, and there's a really wonderful book called Tear Soup that I encourage you to get. It's short, it's almost like a kid's book, but it's beautifully illustrated, and it's really for anyone to help them understand in a very beautifully written way how you can understand grief. And I'm assuming if you're reading this, you're experiencing legitimate sadness, or if you're listening to this, obviously, and I encourage you to feel fully and work through it, but also to seek help. So you may be asking, so what can help to overcome this sadness? For deep grief, there may be waves of these feelings. And with deep grief, it does come in waves, especially when the grief is struck by timely events like Christmas and birthdays. It's very challenging also when the people or situation that you grieve are still alive. And I can really speak to this one. When there's no definitive death, when a situation has totally ended, a person is gone, and even though we may be sad about that, it is really challenging. And I really am careful about saying this situation is worse than others. I've actually been in discussions where people kind of fight for their sadness, like, no, my situation is worse. So I'm not necessarily going to say when someone definitively dies that that's worse, but I can say when the situation still seems to be lingering and looming on is really challenging. And when family members or people in the sidelines of the situation don't know the whole story and don't seem to strive to hear you, this can make things even more difficult to endure. So those are definitely pain points. And here's what I suggest to overcome bouts of sadness at this time. There are many other solutions, but this is something that is particularly helpful when you're experiencing sadness that comes up at certain times of the year in particular. So number one is gather a group. Gather a group of people whom you really love and appreciate and who reciprocate this care. Make your own festivities. And I encourage you, don't do it out of spite. But don't do it out of spite. Like, I'm going to have my own Christmas because you won't invite me to yours. Don't do that, okay? Do your own Christmas, your own festivities, because that's what you want to create around you. And create that loving and joyful environment that you want to have. And spite has no place in that. Let go of assuming of what others are thinking. Similarly, let go of desiring to be understood, especially by extended family or those in the sidelines of your situation. Leave this for your therapist. You can expect your therapist to at least identify with you, but don't expect people who are in your family, extended family, or who are in the situation with you where that you feel sad about to understand you. Others will always have their own perspective and proclivities of what they will believe. Be free of the thoughts or assumed thoughts of other people. Next is seek help. Allow yourself to process. Ask someone close to you to remind you if you're perhaps grieving by the clock. And what I mean is, that is if a holiday is coming up or birthdays with people in the situation that have triggered sadness. These things can trigger sadness instead of joy or more positive memories. In this case, knowing is definitely half the battle. Seek help from your therapist, friends, having people around you and who can, when you're in the depths of grief, it's hard to remember. You may actually be reacting by rote because someone's birthday is coming up or the holidays are coming up, and to have that person who says, I can understand why you're feeling this way because Christmas is coming and this used to be a time, of great memories with these people. And that can be helpful just to have someone identify with you like that. Next is to accept. Accepting a situation as it is does not mean that we like it. It just means that we no longer allow it to have hold of us. Once we can accept a situation as it is, a death, the ending of a relationship, the loss of a belief or a desire, we can just begin to feel whole again. Accepting a loss is like offering the object that is being taken from you. Imagine someone trying to steal a very prized possession. Let go of it. When you give up the object, you no longer struggle. You can rebuild and renew. And last is love. I encourage you to love yourself, love others, and perhaps even eventually love and forgive the situation or other party that seems to have caused the sadness. Maybe. Not saying you have to, but just maybe. To begin this, get out and help others somehow. Volunteer somewhere. Get out of your house where your thoughts seem to be looming. It seems like sometimes when we get in these states of sadness, we want to stay in our cocoon, right? We want to stay where it's cozy and familiar, but it's almost like each corner has its own thoughts and each color has its own memory. And so we create an environment of ruminating thoughts. So I encourage you to get out and especially to help and serve others. This is an amazing healing remedy. And we get to the point of when sadness just doesn't seem to let go. And there are situations I totally identify when it's like sadness is just stuck to you. And no matter what you do, you just can't peel it off. And first of all, I know there are people who hold on to feeling sad because of the attention that it gains them. And if you've made it this far in reading or listening to this podcast, I don't think you're one of these people. If you were, you wouldn't have gotten this far looking for a solution. So we can get past that one. But there are also people in situations where sadness takes a very strong grip and won't let them go. If you're in this state, even though the suggestions I mentioned before may seem totally incomprehensible, like you don't even know how you could take the first step into loving yourself or volunteering or helping another person or accepting or even seeking help, or heck no, there's how you're going to let go, right? But I encourage you to, if that seems impossible, just imagine what it would be like to do just one of them. Just choose one that might be closest to the potential of something that you could do, and imagine what you might do in doing one of those. And lastly, this, I almost balk at saying it, but know that whatever's happening is serving you. And it is, yes, it's easier to say that on the healing side of a situation, but I can assure you this grief, this sadness, this situation is serving you somehow. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I encourage you to think of how you become stronger, wiser, more observant, clearer in thought from this already. Even if you're at the very beginning and you're beside yourself in sadness, there's something at least that you've gained already. And I can say one thing is you're very clear about your feelings. You're very clear about where certain values of yours lie because they have been struck. And I encourage you again, imagine more solutions. See who you can become through this. And soon you will be living and being that person rather than this. And with this podcast, I absolutely send you much love. And I have this, I don't always end with a poem or a saying, but I thought this one was really beautiful. And I do really love this book by John O'Donohue, who is an Irish poet, or was. And this book is called Anam Cara, which means soul friend in Gaelic. It's a book on Celtic wisdom. Love allows understanding to dawn, and understanding is precious. Where you are understood, you are at home. Understanding nourishes belonging. When you really feel understood, you feel free to release yourself into the trust and shelter of the other person's soul. And with this podcast, I am sending you so much love from one mending heart to another. Take care.